We need a redux. So without further ado, some words of wisdom and Torah from our wonderful Cantor.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
It's not quantity, it's quality that counts, correct? There's few of us, but we're all quality people. So I want to speak about a couple of things to do with the Siddur. I've been using the Siddur all my life, singing all the beautiful prayers, growing up in a home where we cherish the Siddur and all its history. There's some very interesting things about it which I want to share with you. How many of you are familiar with a bracha, a blessing? You know, it all starts the same way. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Now, some of the blessings continue with Asher Kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu. Are you all familiar with that? Pretty much. So let's translate it and see what it actually means. Baruch atah Adonai. What does atah mean? You. So when you say, blessed are you, O Lord, you are actually speaking in the second person. You're speaking to God. You're saying atah, which is fine. Blessed are you, O God, King of the universe, Eloheinu melech haolam. But when you say, Asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, you're actually using the third person. Because that means who commanded us with his commandments, made us holy through his commandments. You suddenly changed. It's as if I was talking to you, and I said, it's so nice to see all of you here. By the way, I can't even say it in English, going from the second to third person. I saw them last week instead of I saw you last week. It would be completely crazy to speak that way. How did this happen that in our own Siddurim, we have a bracha, a blessing, which suddenly goes from second person to third person? It totally doesn't make sense. The rabbis knew grammar. I assure you they knew grammar. So what happened? How did we end up with second and third person brachot? Very interesting story. So if you actually take the word atah out of the blessing, out of any blessing, it makes perfect sense grammatically. If you say, blessed is the Lord God, not blessed you, Lord God, who has commanded us and made us holy, it's absolutely perfect. So at some point, the original bracha, the original blessing that we have, didn't have the word atah in it. Every bracha started Baruch Adonai Eloheinu. And then at some point in our history, probably hundreds and hundreds of years ago, the Jews were, again, we've been influenced by Christianity for a long, long, long time. It's not just the other way around. But we have also been influenced by their music, by their customs. And in fact, there's a whole thing that the rabbis came up with, that you shouldn't dress like non-Jews, you shouldn't act like non-Jews, you shouldn't eat food like non-Jews. There was always, we were told not to be like non-Jews. But we were definitely influenced, especially by the idea of a personal God. That when you pray, you say, please, God, I'm talking to you, Baruch atah. So there was a group, obviously at some point in our history, who put pressure on the rabbis to change it, to say Baruch atah. This occurred actually in Babylon around 250 before the Common Era. It's a long, long, long time ago, about 2,200 years ago. And there was two houses of learning, two yeshivot. One was the yeshiva of a rabbi called Rav, and the other one was a rabbi called Shmuel. And they constantly had a debate between them. Just like Hillel and Shammai, you had Rav and Shmuel. So they debated this particular issue about Baruch atah. And Shmuel said, the original blessing is Baruch Adonai, and that's the way it should stay. That's what we have inherited from what we call a Tanaim. These were the rabbis who came before these rabbis. And it says we shouldn't change it. And Rav said, no, there's too much pressure from our congregants. They want a personal God. They want to actually say Atah. So guess what happened? It's just like in a board meeting today, in a shul board meeting where you have 6 opinions, and we have to figure out what to do. So we have both. Although it absolutely makes no sense, we have now all our blessings in a second and third person. But it's sort of interesting in a way, because as you're saying them, now you know this story, now you know the history of second and third person brachot. And it's not just in these Asher Kichanu brachot, it's actually in a lot of the prayers in the Siddur. Kiddush last night. When we start the Kiddush, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei, Atah again, right? And then when we get to the end, Kivanu v'acharta, okay? And then it switches between second and third person. Very, very interesting part of our history. I hope you'll remember that. If anyone ever asks you that, why is there a discrepancy? Now you know. It goes all the way back 2,200 years. Now, if you have your Siddurim in front of you, I'd like to share something that you'll also find probably interesting, and that is what we just did. We prayed the Ashrei together, page 181. If you open up your Siddurim, 181, and here we have what's called an acrostic, an alphabetical acrostic. That means that the first letter of each of the lines is a letter of the alphabet, and it goes in order. Let's look if that's true. Can you see? Start with the word aromimcha. That's 1, 2, 3, 4th line down. Do you see the aleph there? Aromimcha. And then if you keep going, the letters are in bold. Aleph, bet, gimel. Go down. You see that? And turn the page to 182, and it still continues. You have kaf, lamed, mem. There's something missing. What letter of the alphabet's missing? Nun. What happened to Nun? Again, this is taken from the Psalms of David. And here's another interesting fact. When the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, a lot of the original Psalms of David were written on these Dead Sea Scrolls. And guess what? There was a verse starting with the letter Nun. However, this particular version of Ashrei is older than the Dead Sea Scrolls. This was composed by King David, who came much earlier, and probably there was a Nun, because it doesn't make sense for King David, or whoever wrote the Psalms, to have the entire alphabet and leave out one letter. The rabbis in the Talmud couldn't figure this out, so they came up with some kind of homily, some ideas that the letter Nun starts with some negative sentence, negative thought. But that doesn't make sense either, because Nun, you could start with a positive thought. You could find lots of verses starting with Nun which are positive. So this is sort of a little mystery. We're not quite sure why there isn't a Nun here. Now, in a few moments, we're going to be doing the Musaf service, and I'll show you what a backwards acrostic looks like. Very strange. Page 188a. And if you see the prayer in the middle there, it begins Tikanta. Now, this is alphabet backwards. You have Tav, Shin, Resh, you see that? All in bold. Kuf. If you want to work the other way, if it's hard to go backwards, start with Az. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines down, Az, and then go backwards. There's the Aleph, Bet for Bacharu, Gimel for Gedula. You see that? Very strange. So the question is, why do we have these prayers written acrostically? And some scholars seem to think that it's an aid in memorization, which is probably true. If you think of music as an aid, to remembering the ABC, like the wonderful ABC song that we heard on Sesame Street, or the alphabet that Debbie Friedman composed, alphabet, and it's a very, very easy way of learning something using music. In the same way, if you didn't have a Siddur, and Siddurim were not easy to come by, even before the printing press, you can imagine, there weren't Siddurim. So if people had to memorize the Ashrei prayer, if they knew it was an acrostic using the alphabet, okay. Ashrei, Ashrei Yoshev Bitecha, O Yaluch Asar, Bechol Yom Bet, Gadol Adonai, oh, that's easy. That's the way that it was easy for Jews when they were praying and they didn't have Siddurim to know the prayers and to memorize them. Does anyone have any questions about this? About acrostics? I've just shown you really 2 or 3 of them. There are dozens of them, not just in the Siddur, but also in the Old Testament that we call it. Friday night when husbands bless their wives, they sing Eshet Chayil, a woman of worth who can find. That's an acrostic too. That's the alphabet. So it's not just the Siddur, but it goes back to the Torah too. We've had it a long, long, long time. It's a very fascinating thing. If you want to know more about this, you can contact me during the week. I'll be happy to talk to you. It's a very fascinating subject. And if you don't want to talk to me, you can look it up on Google. Okay? Wishing you a Shabbat Shalom. And now since you have your prayers book ready and open, we will continue with Chatzi Kaddish. For those of you who were here last week, you remember the whole story of the Chatzi Kaddish.